Hello everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Kerbal Space Program. I thought that I would have a look at some of the more advanced tutorials here. Our last episode, we made it to orbit and back successfully, but there's definitely, our path there looked a lot to be desired. And so I thought, let's have a look at what the orbital tutorial looks like. That's this one, Orbiting 101. And then maybe I'll also look over science basics, because I feel like we're not doing a great job with the tech tree, and maybe there's something we're missing. But who knows? Maybe it's just we need to do better at flying around and stuff. Anyway, let's get started on the Orbiting 101. Is this actually the one that I meant? This is what to do once you're in orbit. And go back. End the scenario, yes. Did I actually never do the go for orbit? Yeah, we just did advanced construction and then stopped. Go for orbit is what I wanted to look at. I think. Yeah, so today we are going to get to orbit. Assume you know how to build this vessel. And like, look how tiny this is compared to the monstrosity we've been building to get to orbit. There's clearly a lot to be learned from these construction tutorials, or maybe from improving our flight. And this is all stuff like super basic stuff. I don't know. I guess the fact that we're carrying the science makes it a little more expensive to get up, but we shouldn't need like a massive upgrade compared to this. Anyway, this is to get to orbit. We'll follow a curved path to get to the point where we can circularize. Gravity turn will be much shallower. So what, we'll be turning early. I'm not sure what they mean by shallowly, but okay, fine. So they're mentioning here that in some previous version it was more reasonable to get. So maybe what they're saying is that the way I've been getting to orbit is based on having watched old videos where you shoot straight up for quite a while and then eventually turn once you're in space. And they're saying now, actually, you should turn much sooner. They've fixed the air mechanics, I guess? I don't know. Display some technical. Okay, target marker, okay. You shouldn't I be turning on the SAS? So I could enable SAS and switch it to target mode. I see. So I could do that. I don't want to, though. What I want to do is like just fly it myself. But I normally want SAS on, don't I? I don't know. Let's see what happens if I launch it without SAS. Just pay attention to the target marker. Proper time to stage. Okay. Get ready to start pitching down. Okay, that was... I pressed down and it pitched a totally different direction. Okay, I don't know what... Did I get the pitch and yaw mixed up or something? I don't know. Well, let's restart the tutorial. Yep, great. Okay, Z. So he wants me eventually to launch, pitch, once you reach 60 meters per second, pitch down. Which way? Like, that's clearly not right. This is yawing. Okay. So when he says pitch down, he means, okay. That's pressing W. Alright, well, whatever. We'll give this one more try. So they've oriented the ship such that pressing forward is going to rotate me in the direction that I want to go. Alright, I'll take their word for it. At about 60 meters per second, we're going to tip about 10 degrees, apparently. Okay, yeah. It's hard to stay on that marker, but... So we're pitching over quite a bit more than we have been in our in-game. This would be way easier with SAS, I have to say, but they didn't tell me to turn it on, so I'm just trying to freehand it here. So we're turning much more aggressively. We're almost ready to adjust. Very good. Okay. Stage that booster. Yeah, so okay, maybe the way that I have been getting into orbit has been based on my understanding in previous versions of how thick the air is, and it's now not nearly so thick. And you can do a lot more gravity turning before you get out of the atmosphere. Not totally sure I could replicate this particular turn without the target indicator there, but let's have a look at what it's doing to our trajectory and try to emulate that in real life. Okay. Cool. So a pretty... Stage again. Woo! Can I, like... Wow, this is pretty hard to keep on target. Let's turn on SAS. That should help. Cut the engine once the apoapsis hits 80 kilometers. Sure, seems fine. Right-click on the marker so that it remains visible. Oh, yeah, I've done that before. Okay, and I'll use the nav ball to keep things pointed about right. How's our fuel looking? Can I see that? We have a lot left, okay. Anyway, so get into a much more shallow not orbit, but trajectory, and we can do our gravity. We can do our orbital insertion burn, I guess is the word for it, while actually still in the atmosphere. We don't have to get all the way up into space first, which is what was a good idea in the previous versions of Kerbal Space Program that I had seen videos in. Apparently, not a good idea anymore. "54 kilometers. I mean, they've got a display on it here as well, but I'd like to be able to see this one, because that's the one that's going to be visible for me in a real game. Okay. Cut the throttle, you said, right? I agree. Nothing to be worried about, just gravity trying to bring us down. Made sure the engine is shut off, and we'll coast until we clear the atmosphere. So we got our apoapsis to 80,000, and we're now coasting till we get out of atmosphere. At which point, I imagine we'll adjust our periapsis. Yeah, and it's dragging, but not very much. Okay, so I'm... Given that we can do this and still get into orbit, I'm a little bit more confident about maybe being able to do more exciting stuff with, Given the tremendous amount of wasted effort I was putting into getting all the way out of the atmosphere before gaining any sideways velocity at all, I now sort of understand why it's costing me, why I need such large rockets to get myself into orbit. Hopefully, I can either continue using the large rockets and do something more exciting, like go to the moon, or just use some smaller rockets to get into orbit with. Okay, so we're almost out of the atmosphere. Is there a way I can, like, aside from looking at this, is there a way I can make it be visible up here? These don't even have tooltips when I hover them. Ah! Right-clicking, who knows what that does. Spooky. Warping ahead. Now that we are clear of the atmosphere, they're going to teach us about time warp. So we're going to time warp ahead till we're near the apoapsis. Okay. Ooh! You're teaching me about how to do maneuvers here? Okay. Rotate your craft to align it with the prograde marker, or use SAS's maneuver mode. So, they're not teaching me how to set up a maneuver, but they are teaching me how to use one if it was set up, I guess. So if I wanted to, I could push this. But I don't know that I want to. I just want to go to this blue thing here, right? That's where the maneuver is set up for. And I can... Huh. Let's tell the SAS to go to maneuver and see if it does anything. No, it just puts me there. Okay, so that is what I wanted to do. Good. So this is how you can tell the game, when I get to this point, I want to fire the engines this hard for this long, and like have that be executed ahead of time rather than having to manually pilot everything. So you can sort of set up a sequence of more complicated burns, for example, when you have more time, and then once they come up, have them executed automatically without needing to keep an eye on them. Alright, I'm ready to throttle up, right? Cut your engines. Okay, throttle up. Where's my apoapsis? Why can't I easily see it? Or my periapsis? I'm confused. We're stable. Okay. Yeah, that was really quite high. I don't know why the burn was programmed for so long. I was just having trouble finding... I was having trouble finding this node because it wasn't my periapsis. I had already burned long enough to turn this into my apoapsis, getting it further away from the planet. Okay. Okay, so what's he saying? Congratulations, you're in orbit. Well done. Hopefully you can see the difference between the suborbital hop and reaching orbit. And just how far and early we turned. Yes, I agree. That was a big difference. Notice how we designed our rocket to accelerate reasonably through the ascent, and didn't go straight to ludicrous speed. Overpowering the ship is a common rookie mistake. I agree. I think I was doing that. Although, I think for good reason, because I thought I had to get like all the way up into space before doing much of a turn. But I guess these days you don't have to anymore. As far as we're going, you can catch up in the Orbit 101 tutorial, where we'll learn about orbits and adjusting them. Fine. So, if you want, we can bring her back. And so there's a couple ways we could do that. We could, I think it'll be reasonable practice anyway. Wow, we do not have a lot of fuel. So I don't think we could reverse burn now, but what we can do is once we get up here, reverse burn to bring this in. Right? So maybe it's worth seeing how to do... Let's look at the manual here. Right, that's what this is. How do I do maneuvers? Since they showed us this a bit. Space travel. Orbital maneuvers. How to make maneuvers. Bringing all these together so you can do a thing. Great. Delta V. Doing math. Okay, so this is telling me about, like, changing our velocity. That's what we call delta V. Sure. Space has more dimensions. Fine. Pretty much all you ever do is accelerate in a direction or brake by accelerating in the opposite direction. Shaping up. Yes, you thrust in the prograde to adjust eccentricity, right? That's what we've been doing. Adjusting inclination. So this I don't quite know how to do. I've seen it done a long time ago. But I noticed our orbit that we had in the previous episode was like super off the equator. We were in some crazy direction. And so if we had wanted to go to the moon, we would have had to adjust our orbit first. Okay, so you burn in the normal direction. Yes. Which way is... So normal is 90 degrees to your current path, perpendicular to the orbit's plane. Yes, fine. Okay. I guess it makes sense. They're talking about normal and anti-normal, and it wasn't so obvious to me which of those this is. But if you think about, like, let's say we're traveling in this bluish orbit, and we're here. Let's say we're going, I don't know, clockwise, right, like this, in the blue orbit, and we want to have this orbit. While we're near the equator is the easiest time to do this adjustment. And should we burn up or down to adjust this orbit into this one? Clearly we should point down, because we want our orbital speed at this point to be in this direction. And that'll give us an orbit with this shape. Okay. That makes sense. Radial and anti-radial burns. Huh. So pointing straight at the planet while you burn rolls the orbit. What does that mean? I guess just like... will lower the orbit ahead of your vessel. Okay, I guess... It doesn't change the size or shape at all, but rotates it around the center of planet gravity, I guess? Okay. Ugh. So, this is about moving from one circular orbit to another. Yes, I know about how to do this, more or less. That's how we were adjusting our orbit to get into a stable orbit. We're not, we're not close to apoapsis yet. We're not allowed to time warp. The only way I can really see myself getting back down to the planet is a burn up here. And it's of course not urgent to do this in the tutorial, but I thought we would take the time to look through the manual, see if we can see how you can do these, how you can program these maneuvers ahead of time. Okay, so adjusting apoapsis and periapsis at the opposite ends. So we talked about that previously. Using a maneuver node, we can see this in an example. I agree. Adjusting inclination at the equator. Matching planes. Okay, don't really care about that right now. Low Earth orbit, polar orbit, equatorial orbit, and geosynchronous orbit. Yeah, so we've... I know about all this stuff. Okay, fine. And they tell us that geosynchronous equatorial orbit is... So wait, what's the difference between geostationary... This is geostationary, and it doesn't tell us how high that is. But this, what's the difference between these two? This is kerbosynchronous equatorial orbit. I don't understand the difference between these two. This looks like this is geostationary around the equator, and this is kerbosynchronous equatorial, which is geostationary around... Yeah, I don't understand the difference there. Orbital basics? How do we... Rocketry basics? Controls? Map interface. Maneuver nodes. Orbit nodes. When looking at orbits, there's some apoapsis and periapsis. Ascending, descending. So this is to do with the target. Okay, so I don't need to know about these yet. We're not trying to, like, catch other satellites while we're in orbit yet. So I'm not too worried about that. But it can help us for, like, if we want to adjust our orbit. We can set, like, the moon as target, for example, and then get hints about when we're crossing into the right plane for it. More about orbit nodes. So this will show us like what would happen if you did this maneuver that you've programmed. Okay, so how do we actually do a maneuver? The map tool is very important, yes. Left click anywhere on your path, and then the maneuver node shows up, and you just grab one of these things to indicate which direction you want to go. So this is normal and anti-normal. I think these are the ones for raising and lowering periapsis. I forget. These are retrograde and prograde, yes. And I guess these must be the ones pointing towards the planet, and I forget what those are called. Doesn't matter though. Okay, and you drag to activate the thing. So alternate mode lets you move the node forward and backward whole orbits. Okay. So you can say, like, actually wait until the second time we reach this node to do a thing. Okay. So the map interface is what I wanted to look up. Maybe at some point later I'll look at the flight interface and figure out, like, why I can't get the nav ball to work right. So if I wanted to, I had tried right-clicking here, because that just sort of made sense to me, but actually if I want to do a thing, I should left-click and say add a maneuver. So let's say I wanted to... Which of these is which? Show me the maneuver nodes again. Not the flight interface, but the map interface. Maneuver nodes. Alright, so actually what I want is to know about space travel, to know which those icons mean. Apoapsis and periapsis, orbital basics, orbital maneuvers, shaping up. Okay, so the yellow ones are prograde and retrograde. The purple ones, indeed, are normal and anti-normal for adjusting inclination. And I guess the blue ones are radial. Alright. So if I wanted to plot a maneuver here, how do I get this and make it go away? How do I... Is there a way that I can, like, look from the perspective of this thing? I don't know, whatever. I'll just zoom in sort of close to it. From apoapsis, add a maneuver. It says we're 12 minutes away, so we obviously don't want to wait all that time. This one is burning prograde, and this is retrograde, I guess? So I would want to burn retrograde. Yeah, and that's, cool. So that is... I can see what would happen to my orbit. And I don't think we have enough fuel, actually, to do this. But, okay, cool. So that's how I say set up a thing. And now if I wanted to, can I, like... It was telling me I can warp here. Is that a thing you can normally do, or just because this was the tutorial, or what? Hello? How do I... click warp here? Okay, so you can time warp. Very good. And SAS is on. So let's just set it to maneuver. It looks like we are pointed the correct way. And we should be here any second. I just want to confirm that I have understood how this works. So let's get out of map view and see if Valentina takes care of things all on her own here. Burn in 16 seconds? We've programmed ourselves 14 seconds worth of burn, which I don't believe we actually have in the tank, but sure, we'll give it a try. Oh, I have to hit go? Go. Looks like we actually did have enough fuel. This is a pretty efficient little engine. Cool. We used up all of our fuel, just barely, executing that maneuver. And now, we are headed back into the... Can I delete this node somehow? delete. Okay, so we're done with that. Let's just warp to here. Practice re-entry. Nice. I feel a lot more in control of what's happening in space now that I can touch maneuver nodes. And how high are we? Where's my altimeter? Oh, I'm in map mode. Okay, we need to get, is this? Yeah, this is retrograde. Oh, we should have staged this away. I think we're bringing the engine with us. Well, it's gonna blow up any second now, I think. I didn't realize we hadn't finished getting rid of that, but okay, well, see ya. That's what happens when you fly someone else's ship without investigating it first. Well, let's get rid of it now. There we go. Okay, cool. So that ship was still too aerodynamic, and it was pointing prograde instead of retrograde, which it really like caught fire and exploded. But I couldn't just jettison it because it was in front of the part of the ship we wanted to keep. And so the jettisoned part would have slammed right into us. But once it fell off and exploded, we got whipped around to face the proper direction at some point, and then I was able to yeah, forget the SAS, just drift. Then I was able to, what's the word I'm thinking? I was able to jettison it because we got whipped around the right direction, and that part was behind us, and that simplified the re-entry quite a bit. Okay, so we don't have to watch her land. She's going to be just fine, I think. What's the, oh, please, yeah, deploy that now. Go. Okay. Whew. We're coming in closer to land. I don't know. Maybe it would have been fine left at that speed, but whatever. Who cares? Very good. So we survived that tutorial. Great. And I learned about A, a better way to actually get to orbit that is more modern, and B, how to do maneuver nodes. Pretty cool. The manual looked really nice, actually. I liked the way it was presenting complicated topics with like not a lot of text, some diagrams. It was pretty well presented, I thought. It seemed very approachable. And we can look up what we could do in orbit. Right? But this is about adjusting our nodes, but we already did all that stuff, right? Let's just have a look at science basics real quick, and hopefully that won't take too long. See if there's anything important that we're missing about like how to use our science well. He's a scientist, okay. Go to R&D. Okay. In a typical career game, you start with a few parts and have to earn the rest. He's given us some data to our science program. We have 5 to unlock the next node. Let's learn any of them. Alright, well, I'm into rocketry, so let's take some rocketry. Okay, so we can click on it and see what to research next. Great. This is great, but how do I get some science? Yes, that is what I am thinking. You can get some more by doing many things, such as gathering free reports from regions you visit, fulfilling some kinds of contracts, collecting samples from various locations, getting experiment things. There are many possibilities. Most of these actions are performed through context menus, which happen when you right-click on things. You have to transmit the results or survive or return to Kerbin. Yes, so fine. All the activities I mentioned, and many others you can discover, are tracked in a record. Oh, Science Archives. I haven't... yeah, let's go look at it. Okay, you can see which science activities you have performed where, with whom, and how much science you've gotten. This is important because if you do the same experiment multiple times, it doesn't do that much. And you get less science. So another outstanding feature, can we get that out of the sun? Alright. Is that you can check which celestial bodies you visited and done experiments on or around. You can click the icon corresponding to the body. So when you do this, you can only see records, the research week, but in real game you can look at this stuff. Okay, so fine. Next. Get out of there. That covers the basics of science. Okay. Remember that science requires curiosity to go out and experiment. And don't worry if your mission doesn't go as well as planned. If you still learn something new if it's not a complete failure. Yes, that's true. We've had a number of missions that didn't go as planned, but we learned something about how to fly as a result. Kind of like a Dwarf Fortress. Dying is fun. Losing is fun? I forget which one they say. Probably losing is fun. Okay, cool. So, recovery of a vessel that... Oh. That returned... I can't read this. I assume if I had not... I scaled up the UI, right? So, I understand that, but... Okay, well, whatever. Recovery of a vessel... That's something. Splashed down? Survived? Who knows? But it was from a flight over Kerbal. So we can look in our own game and see what our science is like. So let's do that real quick. Oh no, this is still in the experiment. Get out of here. Quit to main menu? I guess. I thought it would say like end scenario. That's what they've previously said. So we're not going to do any more flying in this episode. I was going to say let's go look at our science, but you know what? We'll do that in the next episode. This episode we did a little bit more education and learned about how to fly, hopefully better than we have been. So we should be able to do some more exciting things in future episodes with that knowledge. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.